Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder, and welcome to another video on the F-84G, but this time focusing around a topic rather than the actual plane. I want to cover a question that's been asked a lot, that even I asked myself in a cringy cinematic, which is, what makes a good pilot? Or what makes a good tanker, what makes a good player in general? We have to be looking at stats here. This is one of the factual facts about the fact that you can't tell whether somebody is good or bad by just looking at what they're doing. You have to have a larger viewer base. Now, what I would be willing to do, I'd be willing to play with a person or observe their matches for, let's say, a couple of days, and then that would give me enough understanding on what type of player they are that I wouldn't need to look at stats. A rough estimation would be close enough. But we like to use statistics to evaluate a player's ability to stay alive, a player's ability to be aggressive and survive being aggressive, a bit of management of everything. So, about a year ago, I went through this very interesting phase, which was slightly dramatic, but it was KD ratio. I was getting very, very annoyed by the fact that majority of top-tier squadrons were using KD ratio as their number one way of saying this player is good, this player is bad. Because KD ratio is the ratio base between your kills and your deaths. Now, it's not very hard to get it. It's hard to keep it. And it's only now that I respect KD ratio. I think it's a very, very specific number that only a specific amount of players with their skill set are able to get to a higher level. In average, I'm going to put it like this. This is my estimation. When I'm looking at KD ratio, this is how I look at it. A kill ratio of 1 to 1, meaning you killed one player, you died to one player, you repeat that 100 matches, that would be still the same ratio. I consider that average to bad. The second one would be anything about or around 1.8 to 2. That I consider to be average to good, and everything above 2.5 I consider to be excellent, and I tend to treat any KD ratio above 3, whether it would be 3 or 6 or 19, I consider to deem those the same worthy, because really any kind of KD ratio beyond, I believe, 6, I would tend to deem as a manufactured KD ratio. Now, manufactured KD ratio is something we'll take a look and return to towards the end of the video. You'll notice it very obviously, but I want to go and tear this one down a bit. I'm not a fan, still, of just KD ratio, because just KD ratio is just telling you how well you can kill and how well you can stay alive. In general, though, it's just a number, and outside of that extreme above 3 KD ratio, most of them are very hard to determine. Because a player could have played 100 matches where they get 2 kills and die once, or 100 matches where they get 1 kill, don't die, but lose the game. And for me, I respect the player who won the game, died, but did more work along the time, and yet these two players still have the exact same KD ratio. So, when we were going through creating Forehead a couple of months ago, we had to go through a system where we were going to evaluate if a player is good enough to join the squadron. And suddenly we met the same kind of problem that I think most squadrons a year ago and still do, is how do you evaluate a player, whether they're willing or cooperative enough to be able to be tested. Now, of course, you can test every player individually. You can fly with them, fly against them, go into a duel, observe them. But in general, you have to spend quite a bit of time doing that. And if you've got over 100 people applying, there's no way we're going to be spending that amount of time doing it. So instead, we try to look elsewhere for any kind of information we can gather from the statistics that would not nullify, but balance out just one stat. Because looking at just one statistics or one ratio is very, very one-sided. It will give you a lot of information. Again, KD ratio tells me a lot about a player, but not the full story. So to maximize the efficiency of the KD ratio, my friend Quetzal, also one of my moderators, and for me, I deem him as the creator of this idea, this equation, this mathematical geniusness, which is very, very simple indeed. He multiplied kills per deaths by kills per battles. So really, the ratio that we were looking at, for me, when I glance at somebody's stats, I look at 3 numbers. The amount of kills they've got, the amount of deaths they've got, and the amount of matches they've played. These 3 stats in itself tell me probably 95% of what I need to know about that player before I go into an engagement with them or against them. Now, what do kills per battles tell you, though? This is worth of explaining so that people don't get confused. Kills per battles, for me, are an indication of consistency. How consistently you can go into a game and come out with a certain amount of kills. And the reason I found this important is because when I was going through the spading process, for me, it tells the efficiency of how well you can benefit your research points, how well you can really outcome with the, top of the leaderboards, but also get your required RP by winning the game, by doing the damage. It gives me that consistency that's important. There's still one thing missing. Now, the one thing missing from this entire big equation has to be win ratio. Win ratio is something that I think is important for the fact of, can you elaborate whether the player is able to do the best for the team? And this is why I said 95%, because I think that the 5% is a very small margin of where the player is so good, they can single-handedly change the outcome of the game. Now, really, it's impossible. I think in tanks in general, it's completely redundant to even try to do this. In aircraft, a good pilot dragging out the match, boom and zooming, yeah, it can be done. But the 5% would pretty much speak to me about a player who's able to read the match as it goes along, bait for the right people, cover the right individuals, and obviously come out with a win at the end. However, we decided not to include the win ratio into any kind of equation of calculating a wannabe skill level or a ratio of competence, because it's not based on you, it's based on your team. And so it would be a little bit mean to have somebody's stats lowered or somebody else's stats raised based upon the vehicle they were playing, the upgradability, and obviously the team they were based upon. Another thing worth mentioning about the ratio of kills to battles to kills to deaths is that it doesn't work for everything the same way. Tanks versus planes, mainly air battles versus ground battles, massive difference. Primarily, air battles tend to consist of higher KD ratios and lower KB ratios. Meanwhile, in tanks, the KB ratio is usually higher for average match, not for average vehicle, and the KD ratio tends to be a little bit lower. Because in aircraft, you've got one spawn. You go in, you do the damage, you get out. In ground battles, you spawn in, you die, you go for a capture point, you die again, you spawn a plane, you get a couple of frags, you spawn SPA, you protect again, you get the draft. There's a difference in the way the game would work. So in interpreting these stats, if looking specifically, let's say, at the F-34B here, not the G, the B variant, which can be used in ground battles, that plane, its statistics have to be evaluated based upon the game mode they were played in. Same as, for example, my F2 Sabre. If you're looking at my F2 Sabre stats, the KD ratio looks good based upon aircraft, but there's also ground kills there, and not all of those ground kills are players. Some of them are AI from the very old days of air realistic battles where I was killing AI. So it's very, very important to understand that certain stats can unfortunately be manufactured, and so interpreting stats as such of a player that decides to go and kill the formations of IL-2s on Berlin would result in a very, very bad evaluation of the player skill. Now, I'm not a big fan of AI. As a matter of fact, I think AI should entirely be removed and put into a individual game mode of their own where things like bombers can strive. Because I wouldn't mind playing a bomber or a heavy bomber, strategic bomber like a B-29, in a game mode where I'm being engaged and protected by a horde of AI mix 15s and F2 Sabres and whatnot. But in the current state of the game, there's still AI in the game, obviously, and these IL-2Ms served as a bunch of free kills. I just kind of went flying through them. I thought, hey, we get some hits in. I wanted to test something out. I wanted to test out whether these AI would actually account to player kills in the stat card, which, if correct, would result in me being able to fly into every single game, kill about a dozen of these, and just manufacture what is a high KD ratio. So if, for example, somebody was evaluating me for entering a squadron or going into a competition based upon my KD ratio in the F-34G, doing this could effectively get one of the biggest noobs into a very competitive place, accidentally. But obviously, since not only one plane is being taken a look at, and this is only a case on one map, it wouldn't really make a big of a difference. But I think what War Thunder would be not so much in need of, but it would basically come in very handy for evaluating players, is a rank. Not a ranked system. I know we've talked about this on the podcast a couple of times with Chicken and Soren and Sligby and Fly, but the idea is that every player gets given simply a number. It doesn't need to be like gold, platinum, diamond, it just has to be a number. And that number, if is always based off of the same ratio, let's say KD times KB, would result in you being able to immediately assess whether these players are good, bad, mediocre, average, giving you a bit of an understanding of what you're fighting and how you maybe want to approach the enemy. So the trick behind it was to... Well, I took a look at the current statistics, the way they work, the way Guardians has laid it out. And whilst there's quite a few fixes I'd love to see, like separating player kills from AI kills, separating ground kills that are AI and ground kills that are players, minor fixes like that are necessary, but not even needed. This is the fun part about the way, well, for us, the way we calculate the KD ratio times KB ratio, the ratio of skill, is that you don't need accurate stats to be displayed. You just need to take the substats. So if somebody's playing, let's say in this case, the F-84G in air battles, the only importance there should be is player kills divided by player deaths. That's it. Nothing else is needed but player kills. So if their algorithms or the statistic information that's being collected can differentiate from an AI kill to a ground kill, so if it's comparing me shooting down an IL-2 and not equally putting that into a calculation as me killing a P-80, or if it takes, for example, an account me shooting an AI light tank or an AI M18 in the ground battles, if it's able to differentiate those, then in that case we don't need any kind of fix into statistics. That would just be a bit of a, I guess, eye candy. And whilst I think some of you might not agree with the way we've done this calculation, it is by far the simplest. I don't think there's any other way to do it that would include less than 2 variables, or that they would be easy to read, because we're talking about 3 statistical parts here: deaths, kills, and battles. That's all you need. It's very easy to extract this information. It's very easy to calculate with it. They're simple numbers, 2 digits, nothing really complicated. And I think in general, it's by far much more complex and simple at the same time than just using a solid KD ratio or just the KB ratio of, maybe just like looking at win ratio. That's probably the worst thing you can do, is looking at a ratio that is based off of a team rather than off of an individual player. Now, when it comes to mathematics, I'm probably the least... I say the opposite of a skilled person. I'm very, very blunt with making equations, or at least understanding them. I bet somebody out there is a little bit more skilled in this and would be able to provide further statistical information, including it in, perhaps even mixing the win ratio. How this equation could be done, I've got absolutely no clue, because for me, at the moment, the ratio of kills per battles multiplied by kills per deaths is the perfect ratio for me to be able to get the good 90 to 95% of the overall player's skill set, so I can then evaluate them further. Obviously, by no means am I claiming this is what Gaijin should do. If they do decide to do something along these lines, it would be definitely nice to see. I think it's a very simple ratio. But in general, this is what I've been using, and this is what I'll continue to use until a better system is implemented, suggested, or in other shape, way, or form claimed. So, back to the original question. Do these AI actually contribute kills to your stat card? Because if they do, a player could have 0 player kills and a plethora of IL-2s. As a matter of fact, I'm confident, and I'm almost triggered to say I'd love to see somebody try this, but to get a positive KD ratio without dying once, but having killed only AI. I think it might be possible. Somebody could have 100 kills and 0 deaths in a matter of 5 matches without having killed a single player vehicle. I mean, that's one of the main problems with AI, isn't it? Is that you can go into these matches and just manufacture kills over and over again. But there is one silver lining. There's only one positive reason for having AI in the game, and probably 99% of you won't be able to guess the reason. Skins. You see, skins are something that requires a large amount of kills. Now, for aircraft, it's not too hard to get 150 kills. But for tanks, the requirements are sometimes upwards of 400 kills on vehicles. And so matches like Carpathians, which I despise with the AI spam, matches like the new Kuban, which has been reworked and looks absolutely horrible, some of these maps have overwhelming amounts of AI that just spawn in and trample over everything. However, it takes one shell placed in the engine deck, setting it on fire, to get yourself a free kill. And that one kill, multiplied by 2, because the RB multiplier will grant you ×2 for the skin grind. And if you're trying to get a skin that requires 700 kills on something like a Chieftain Mark V, which I've been doing recently, maybe those AI are not so annoying after all, but again, what do you rather have? Skins and KD ratios that were acquired from, killing very, very badly designed artificial intelligence? Or do you want to have, a game mode where unlocking skins is based off of something like special achievements, a certain amount of kills per match, and not just an actual number of kills that you've obtained? For me, I mean, obviously my opinion here is that I'd love to see the latter happen, to see an introduction of unique skins that are unlocked not through just kills, but also through certain achievements. And so every time you would see the player fly an aircraft with that skin on, you'd know exactly what they're capable of or what they've done, what the achievement really is. So if you wanted, you could have an achievement for getting a skin that requires you to kill 16 Al-2Ms on Berlin. If that's the case you want, that would be the skin that you would obtain. But that would obviously also be what the skin would speak out. And I think that would make evaluating players even so much easier. Instead of opening up the stat card in the middle of the match to figure out if the player is, flying a B-29 up at 8k camping, or if the person is sitting in the runway camping. This whole stat identification, trying to understand what the player is, what they're doing, why they're doing it, by looking at their stats aimlessly when it's a conglomerate mix of bombers and fighters and ground targets and ground pounders, and you don't know which game mode they're playing them in. It would be a lot more simple if you just took a simple rank into consideration and obviously consequently removed and added some of the skin changes, in the sense that you could unlock something not so much for just repetitively playing the game, doing the same thing over and over again, which is just showing that you have a lot of free time, but also things that require a lot of concentration, maybe a bit of a challenge, and at the end of the day can make the enemy respect you and fear you at the same time. In overall, the F-84G, if we return back to this plane, the very first match that I showed you was in fact a bit of a test. I took the aircraft into an 8.0 match, got up to 9.0, did get taken out, but I think this plane is much closer to being worthy of a battle rating 8.0 than it is for being at a battle rating 7.3. So, yeah, I think this thing up to about 7.7 wouldn't be a bad thing in the nearby future, albeit I think it can confidently, with its top speed, handle even 8.0. Obviously, in that case, when you do get up to 9.0, that's not fun, but we've talked about this before. Top-performing jets, such as the CL-13, MiG-17, Hunter, and F-2 Sabre, should be moved to a 9.3 or a 10.0 in the near future anyways, to kind of decompress the matchmaker and give us a little bit more breathing space in this mid-tiering so the jets can finally become playable. And the closer we are to that, the closer I am to actually return to jet battles myself actively and starting to participate in more than just casual close air support in ground forces. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was a blast flying out, or rather looking at the footage of once having flown out the F-34G. This thing is obviously spaded long ago. I don't think I'll be flying out this thing anytime soon because it is at the moment quite overpowered, and this might sound surprising, but I don't have any fun. I don't find any amusement in flying something that is so straightforward, so easy, and so leisureful. I do like a bit of a challenge, but obviously not that much of a challenge, so I might return to jets soon, testing out some of the top-performing jets in the game, testing out some of the stuff I used to enjoy, but the majority, specifically 8.0s, as very well explained by Chicken Bites a couple of weeks ago, it's a bit of a dead BR. It's very, very hard to play because of the players that are majority spamming in 9.0 vehicles, with the only 8.0s really being stuff like the Tier 4, which I don't think should be in this matchmaking in the first place. It's very, very hard to get equal, fair matchmaking where 8.0 meets 8.0. At the moment, it's more or less been 8.0 always going against 9.0, and the occasional 9.0 fighting against 8.0 tends to be a spaded to unspaded comparison, which just kind of tears things apart. So, yeah, I mean, where the battle rings are going to go, where we're going to see jet combat in a couple of months, is down to anyone's guess. I am still in contact with Gaijin, with the whole podcast thing, so we are working on getting these battle ratings hopefully slowly improved, or at least taking a look at. Anything really of a response from the development team is very, very welcome. But again, I can't promise anything myself. We're just doing the best that we can to slowly decompress the matchmaker, get a bit of breathing space, and so that we open stuff for the development and also bring some of the currently kind of dead vehicles back into the game mode. Anyways, I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be back with more footage very, very shortly. I've had some issues and a couple of setbacks with the editing program, software, computer in general, and a couple of account security problems, down to, well, pretty much my common stupidity and breaking my phone. but I'll be having those results very, very shortly so I can continue back with the content. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.